Millionaire's wife forces pregnant maid to sing at wedding. What he did. Shocked everyone, the grand ballroom of the Willowbrook estate sparkled with thousands of crystal lights hanging from the ceiling like frozen stars. Everything looked perfect for what should have been the most beautiful wedding of the year. But in a small corner of the magnificent hall, a pregnant woman in a plain black uniform stood quietly, trying to make herself invisible. Her name was Sophia Martinez, and she was 8 months pregnant, working as a maid for the wealthy Harrison family. She had no idea that in just a few hours her life would change forever in the most unexpected way. Sophia had been working for the Harrison family for 2 years now. At 31 years old, she had once dreamed of becoming a professional singer. She had spent years performing in small clubs and coffee shops, pouring her heart into every song. But life had taken a different turn when her husband Carlos had died in a car accident 3 years ago, leaving her with mountains of medical bills and a broken heart. She had taken the job as a maid to survive, putting her musical dreams in a box and hiding them away. When she discovered she was pregnant 8 months ago, the father, a man named Daniel who had promised her the world, had disappeared the moment she told him the news. Now she stood alone, carrying a child with no father, working at a wedding where she didn't belong. The bride, Victoria Harrison, was everything Sophia was not. She was tall and elegant, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a wedding dress that cost more than Sophia would make in 5 years. Victoria came from old money, and she had married Alexander Bennett, a technology millionaire who had built his fortune from nothing. Alexander was different from the other wealthy people Sophia had met. He was kind and always thanked the staff for their work. He had warm brown eyes and a gentle smile that made everyone feel comfortable around him. But Victoria was cold and cruel, especially to the staff. She treated them like they were less than human, and she seemed to take special pleasure in making Sophia's life difficult. That morning, as Sophia arranged flowers in the reception hall, Victoria had walked past her with her group of bridesmaids. Victoria stopped suddenly and looked at Sophia with disgust. "Make sure you stay out of sight during my wedding," Victoria had said coldly. "I don't want my guests seeing a fat pregnant maid ruining my perfect day." The bridesmaids had laughed, and Sophia had felt her cheeks burn with shame. She had simply nodded and continued working, her hand moving protectively to her swollen belly. The baby kicked inside her, as if sensing her distress. Sophia whispered softly to her unborn child, "It's okay, little one. Just a few more hours, and we can go home." The wedding ceremony took place in the estate's beautiful garden. 400 guests sat in white chairs decorated with silk ribbons and fresh roses. Sophia watched from a distance as Alexander and Victoria exchanged their vows. Alexander looked handsome in his black tuxedo, but Sophia noticed something strange. He didn't look happy. His smile seemed forced, and when he said, "I do," his voice was quiet and uncertain. Victoria, on the other hand, beamed with triumph, as if she had won a prize rather than married the man she loved. After the ceremony, everyone moved to the ballroom for the reception. Sophia and the other staff members rushed to serve champagne and appetizers to the guests. Her feet ached terribly and her back screamed in pain, but she kept working. She needed this job desperately. The money she earned would help her prepare for the baby's arrival. As the evening progressed, something unexpected happened. The wedding. Singer, a famous performer named Catherine Wells, suddenly became very ill. She rushed to the bathroom and didn't come back. The wedding coordinator, Mrs. Patricia Coleman, looked panicked as she whispered urgently to Victoria. The guests were expecting the first dance, but there was no one to sing the special song that Victoria had chosen. Victoria's face turned red with anger. "This is a disaster," she hissed at Mrs. Coleman. "How could you let this happen? My wedding is ruined." That's when Victoria's eyes fell on Sophia, who was clearing plates from a nearby table. A cruel smile spread across Victoria's face, and Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. Victoria walked over to Sophia with deliberate steps, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a white cloud. "You," she said loudly, making sure many guests could hear her. "I heard you humming in the kitchen yesterday. You can sing, can't you?" Sophia's heart began to pound. She had been humming an old lullaby her mother used to sing, not thinking anyone would hear. I used to sing a little," Sophia stammered, "but I haven't performed in years, Mrs. Bennet." Victoria's smile grew wider and more cruel. "Perfect. You'll sing for our first dance. After all, you should earn your pay somehow." The guests nearby began to whisper and laugh. Some pointed at Sophia's pregnant belly and her maid uniform. Sophia felt tears burning in her eyes. "Please, Mrs. Bennet, I don't think that's appropriate. I'm not prepared, and I'm just the help." Victoria's voice turned sharp and dangerous. "Are you refusing a direct order? Because I can fire you right now. Is that what you want? To be unemployed with a baby on the way?" Sophia felt trapped. She needed this job more than anything. Without it, she would have no way to support her baby. Her hands trembled as she set down the plates she was holding. "No, Mrs. Bennet. I'll sing." Victoria clapped her hands together in fake delight. "Wonderful. Everyone, gather around. We have a special treat. Our pregnant maid is going to entertain us with a song." The way she said it made it clear that this was meant to be a humiliation, not an honor. Hundreds of guests turned to stare at Sophia, their faces showing a mixture of amusement, pity, and disgust. Alexander, who had been talking to some business partners, turned to see what was happening. When he saw Sophia standing in the middle of the dance floor in her maid uniform, her face pale with fear, his expression changed. He started walking toward them, but Victoria grabbed his arm. "Darling, isn't this fun? The maid is going to sing. For us," she said sweetly, but her grip on his arm was like iron. Alexander looked at his new wife, and for the first time, he truly saw her for what she was. The orchestra conductor approached Sophia nervously. "What song would you like to perform, miss?" he asked kindly. Sophia's mind went blank. She couldn't remember any songs. All she could think about was the hundreds of eyes staring at her, judging her, laughing at her. Then, from somewhere deep inside her, she remembered a song she had written years ago after Carlos had died. It was a song about loss and hope, about finding light in the darkest moments. She had never performed it for anyone, but somehow it felt right for this moment. "I'll sing my own song," she said quietly to the conductor. "It's called When the Morning Comes. It's in G major, slow tempo." The conductor nodded and quickly instructed his orchestra. As the first notes began to play, Sophia closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened her mouth to sing, something magical happened. Her voice, clear and pure as mountain water, filled the entire ballroom. Every single person stopped talking and turned to listen. The words poured out of her soul, telling a story of pain and redemption. Her voice rose and fell like waves on the ocean, carrying emotion so deep that several guests found tears rolling down their cheeks. Even the waiters stopped serving to listen. Sophia sang about the darkness that comes before dawn, about the strength found in the weakest moments, about the love that survives even death. As she reached the chorus, her voice soared to notes so beautiful that people felt goosebumps on their arms. The baby inside her seemed to calm, as if listening to its mother's voice. Alexander stood frozen, his eyes wide with amazement. He had never heard anything so beautiful in his entire life. He looked at Victoria and saw that her face had turned white with rage. She had expected Sophia to embarrass herself, to sound terrible, and provide entertainment through her failure. Instead, Sophia was revealing herself to be an extraordinary talent. When Sophia finished the song, there was a moment of complete silence in the ballroom. Then, like thunder after lightning, applause erupted. People stood from their chairs, clapping and cheering. Some were crying openly. An elderly woman in diamonds approached Sophia and took her hands. "My dear, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard," she said. "You have a gift from God." But Victoria's voice cut through the applause like a knife. "That's enough," she screamed. "Get back to the kitchen where you belong, you worthless servant." The entire room fell silent again, but this time it was a shocked, uncomfortable silence. Guests looked at each other in disbelief. Had the bride really just said that to the woman who had just given such a magnificent performance? Alexander, finally, broke free from Victoria's grip and walked to the center of the dance floor. His face was stern, and his voice was loud and clear when he spoke. "No," he said simply. "No, Victoria. This ends now." Victoria's eyes widened in shock. "What are you talking about? She's just a maid." Alexander turned to face all the guests. "This woman is not just anything. She's a human being with extraordinary talent, and you just tried to humiliate her for your own entertainment." He then turned to Sophia, who was shaking, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry for what just happened. You don't deserve this treatment." Victoria grabbed Alexander's arm again. "Have you lost your mind? We just got married. These are our guests." Alexander looked at his new wife with eyes full of disappointment and disgust. "Yes, we just got married, and in less than 2 hours, you've shown me who you really are." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a checkbook. Right there, in front of everyone, he wrote a check and handed it to Sophia. "This is for your performance tonight, and for all the cruel treatment you've endured. It's enough to ensure you and your baby will be comfortable for a long time." Sophia looked at the check and gasped. It was for $200,000. "I can't accept this," Sophia protested, but Alexander shook his head. "You can, and you will. But that's not all." He turned to face the crowd again. "I want everyone here to know that I'm starting a record label, and the first artist I'm signing is Sophia Martinez." The room buzzed with excitement and whispers. Victoria's face turned purple with rage. "You can't do this. I'm your wife." Alexander turned to her with a sad smile. "Actually, Victoria, you're not going to be my wife for much longer. I'm filing for annulment first thing Monday morning. This marriage was a mistake." Victoria started screaming and crying, but Alexander ignored her. He turned back to Sophia. "I have connections in the music industry. That voice of yours needs to be heard by the world. Will you let me help you achieve your dreams?" Sophia couldn't believe what was happening. Just an hour ago, she had been a pregnant maid being humiliated at a wedding. Now, a millionaire was offering to help her become a professional singer. "But why?" she asked. "Why would you do this for me?" Alexander's eyes were kind as he answered. "Because everyone deserves a chance to shine, and because what Victoria did tonight was unforgivable. She tried to humiliate you, but instead, you showed everyone here what real grace and talent look like." Over the next few weeks, Alexander kept his promise. He hired the best lawyers to handle his annulment from Victoria, who fought viciously, but ultimately lost because Alexander had recordings from security cameras showing her cruel treatment of the staff. He also hired the best doctors to care for Sophia during the final month of her pregnancy. When she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, whom she named Elena, Alexander was there at the hospital with flowers and a teddy bear. He had become not just her employer or mentor, but a true friend. He helped her find a beautiful apartment in a safe neighborhood and made sure she had everything she needed for the baby. 3 months after Elena was born, Sophia walked into a professional recording studio for the first time in her life. Alexander had arranged for her to work with Marcus Thompson, one of the most renowned producers in the music industry. Marcus had heard the recording from the wedding and was eager to work with her. "That voice," he said when he met her, "is once in a generation. We're going to make something special." As Sophia stood in the recording booth with Elena sleeping peacefully in a bassinet nearby, she thought about how much her life had changed. She recorded When the Morning Comes as her first single, the same song that had changed everything. At the wedding. The song was released 6 months later and immediately began climbing the charts. Radio stations played it constantly, and people couldn't get enough of the story behind it. The pregnant maid who had been forced to sing at a millionaire's wedding, only to reveal a voice that touched millions of hearts. Sophia appeared on talk shows, always gracious and humble, thanking Alexander for believing in her when no one else would. She never spoke badly of Victoria, saying only that sometimes the worst moments in our lives can lead to the best opportunities. Her album, titled Morning Light, went platinum within 3 months. She won 2 Grammy Awards and performed at sold-out concerts across the country. Alexander attended every major performance, always sitting in the front row, proud of what Sophia had accomplished. As time passed, their friendship deepened into something more. He was wonderful with Elena, who called him Uncle Alex, and laughed whenever he made funny faces at her. 2 years after that fateful wedding, Alexander asked Sophia to dinner at a quiet restaurant. "I need to tell you something," he said, taking her hand across the table. "That night at my wedding, when you sang, something changed in me, not just because of your voice, but because of your strength, your dignity, your grace under pressure. I fell in love with you that night, Sophia. I've been in love with you ever since." Sophia's eyes filled with tears, but they were happy tears, this time. "I love you too, Alexander. You saved my life. You gave me and Elena a future." Alexander shook his head. "No, you saved yourself. I just opened a door. You're the one who walked through it and claimed your destiny." They were married a year later in a small ceremony with only close friends and family. Elena, now 3 years old, was the flower girl, throwing petals with enthusiasm and making everyone laugh. There was no cruelty, no humiliation, only love and joy. Victoria, meanwhile, had lost everything. The video of her cruel behavior at the wedding had gone viral, and she became known as the worst bride in history. Her family's reputation was ruined, and she had to leave the country to escape the shame. She lived alone in a small apartment in Paris, working as a shop assistant, a far cry from the life of luxury she had once known. Sometimes she would hear Sophia's songs on the radio and remember the night she had tried to humiliate a pregnant maid, only to unleash a star instead. Years passed, and Sophia became one of the most beloved singers in the world. She used her wealth and influence to help other struggling single mothers, creating a foundation that provided childcare and support for women trying to pursue their dreams while raising children alone. She never forgot where she came from, or the pain of being looked down upon. In every interview she would say, "Everyone has a gift inside them. Sometimes it takes the darkest moment to reveal the brightest light." Elena grew up surrounded by music and love, with 2 parents who adored her and taught her that kindness and courage were the most important things in life. Alexander's technology company continued to thrive, but his greatest pride was his record label, which had become known for discovering talented artists who might otherwise never have been heard. He and Sophia worked together, using their success to lift others up. They had 2 more children together, twin boys named Carlos and James, and their home was always filled with laughter and music. Sometimes, late at night, Sophia would remember that horrible night at the wedding when Victoria had forced her to sing. She would remember the fear, the humiliation, the feeling of being worthless. But then she would look at her sleeping children, at Alexander reading in bed beside her, at the gold records on the wall, and she would smile. That night, Victoria had meant to destroy her, to use her pregnancy and her position as a maid to humiliate her in front of hundreds of people. Instead, that moment of cruelty had become the catalyst for everything beautiful in Sophia's life. It had revealed her talent to the world, brought her the love of her life, and given her the career she had always dreamed of. As Sophia often said in her concerts, "Sometimes the people who try to break us are actually the ones who help us discover how strong we really are. They force us to dig deep and find the diamond that was always there, waiting to shine. The story of the millionaire's wife who forced a pregnant maid to sing at her wedding became legendary in the music industry. It was turned into a movie that won multiple Oscars, with the proceeds going to Sophia's foundation for single mothers. The wedding venue, the Willowbrook Estate, became famous as the place where a star was born, and couples would request to get married in the exact ballroom where Sophia had sung that fateful night. They would always ask for the story to be told during the reception, as a reminder that kindness matters, that everyone deserves respect, and that you never know when the person you're looking down on might be the one who rises highest of all. Alexander and Sophia lived a long and happy life together, raising their children to be kind, generous, and brave. When Elena grew up, she became a human rights lawyer, fighting for workers' rights and using her mother's story as inspiration. The twins became musicians like their mother, but they always remembered her teaching. Talent means nothing without kindness. Success means nothing without humility. And the greatest achievement in life is lifting others up, not tearing them down. And whenever Sophia performed "When the Morning Comes," the song that had changed everything, she would think of that scared, pregnant maid standing in a ballroom full of strangers, finding her voice when someone tried to silence it. And she would smile, knowing that sometimes the worst moments in our lives are actually the beginning of something extraordinary. The millionaire's wife had forced a pregnant maid to sing at her wedding, thinking it would be the maid's humiliation. Instead, what Alexander did shocked everyone. But more importantly, it proved that standing up for what's right, protecting those who cannot protect themselves, and recognizing the value in every human being are the actions that define true wealth and success. Victoria had thought that money and status made her superior, but Sophia proved that talent, grace, and dignity could not be bought or sold. They were gifts that shone brightest when tested by adversity, and no amount of cruelty could dim their light. In the end, the pregnant maid who was forced to sing didn't just find her voice that night. She found her future, her family, and her faith in the goodness that can emerge from even the darkest moments. And that, more than any song or success, was the real miracle of that unforgettable wedding night.